Welcome, welcome to the Wellther Series. This is number 4 of 4 with Doug Lawrence, and we're looking at the topic of mentoring and mentor and mentorship and mentoring arrangement. It's all sort of fitting into place, and I'm really enjoying these conversations with Doug. So thanks, Doug, for where we're going with this.
My pleasure.
But today was a little bit different, is that often I ask the person I'm going to interview or have these conversations with, what are some of the topics that they'd like to look at? And then I sort of vary them around. But today I said to Doug, listen, I want to take a look at this world of certification as it fits with mentoring. And I said, there's a couple of things I want to look at. And he said, yeah, sure, I'll sort of go along with you. And I said, great. So let's have a conversation about certification. And I said, one of the things that seems to be popping itself up, and when you start looking at social media, is there's a question about this paid and free mentoring. So I said, let's have a chat about that. And then I said, well, let's take a look at why is it important to even do certification. Then there's a couple of other topics, but I think it would be really helpful for us, and I'm talking about the listeners, to pick up on the storyline of paid and free. What are your thoughts around the paid and free storyline?
It's an interesting topic, and so part of the reason why I say that is that you still have some folks out there that are involved in mentoring that are of the firm belief that mentoring should be always free. And so the thing that I challenge our listeners is that we've talked about mentoring going through a paradigm shift. So mentoring, and we've talked about it from the aspect of the traditional style of mentoring, the gray-haired old sage, the gray hair of wisdom and all that stuff, and moving forward to it being now, obviously a two-way trusted relationship where both are going to learn and grow, all of that stuff. But what we're also seeing is in the mentoring marketplace is that there is actually a combination of paid mentoring and mentoring that's done pro bono or for free. And when I've been doing my research and doing lots of reading into this, because you want to understand where the mentoring marketplace is going and how people are still seeing it, what I uncovered was a couple articles that spoke to the aspect of the need, not the need, but that the relationship was one where the mentee was paying the mentor. Now, two things to think about is that mentoring can be done from the organizational perspective. So they may either do it internally, which, they may, at that stage, it may end up being free, but they may also bring in an outside mentor. And it's at times like that I definitely, I know I'm experiencing that is I'm being brought in to work with, what I call executive mentoring, and they pay for me to be there. So, so there's definitely some of that. But coming back to the research I was absolutely blown away by what some people actually charge. Like it's thousands and thousands of dollars per session for, a good mentor. And, it's obviously at that price level, it's somebody that's probably working with some very senior Fortune 500 executives or people, that are celebrities that have reached out and have asked for mentors. And yes, folks, even celebrities have mentors as well. But, the aspect behind it all was that if you're looking for somebody that can bring value to you as a person, as the mentee, that person may very well be somebody you're going to have to pay in order to be able to access them. So, the aspect of paid versus free, what I'm finding certainly in what I do on a day-to-day basis is it's a combination of the two. It's, there are sometimes people can afford to pay, to engage with you, but a large part of it is organizations are now starting to appreciate the business value of mentoring, and they're saying we're willing to pay for that type of service. And when I talk about mentoring services, I'm talking about, obviously the one-on-one mentoring, the group mentoring, maybe coming in and doing mentoring circles. It can be that, it can be doing sort of the assessment of the organization's, we'll call it culture, to see whether they're even ready for mentoring. So all of those things are things that organizations and people are willing to pay for when they know that they're going to get quality, when they know that they're going to get value, because here's somebody that, is obviously charging for their time. Therefore, we hope that, that individual is kind of worth their weight, right? So what I'm seeing in the marketplace, just to kind of summarize this particular point, is that with the paradigm shift, so too is the shift in it having to be free all the time. That's not the case anymore. Is that there are definitely times where you're going to pay, and there's times where where it's going to be free. And I want to take us back just really quickly to just kind of tie this together, is that, we talked about, the mentor, the great mentor, and the extraordinary mentor. Don't be surprised if, when you engage with an extraordinary mentor, they are going to want to be able to be paid for their time and their effort. And part of that is somebody that is an extraordinary mentor may very well be somebody that is certified. And I know we're going to talk about that here shortly, but is that, so, you're paying for what the individual can bring to the table, but you're also paying, here's somebody that's had some, we'll call it formal education, some formal training around the mentoring process, and what processes or what concepts can you put into place that are going to be of the most value to the person you're spending time with.
And you use the phrase mentoring marketplace. I think that's really what we're talking about here. Yep. Is that there is now a marketplace. And there isn't a really good example that tends to get used a lot. And that's someone who has become very social media savvy. And we might associate that would be someone who's a little bit younger than dealing with a senior manager. That's how it's sort of looked at. So that person has lived experience and expertise in that. So they don't necessarily going to give it for free, right?
Yeah.
In the marketplace. Now, inside organizations could be a little bit different. So that person who doesn't have that experience is going to pay someone who is younger. That's why we, in our world where Doug and I share and have our conversations, we don't talk about the age part. What we're talking about is the lived experience. You're paying for the lived experience, but if the mentor chooses to give it to you for free, then that's their interpretation of the marketplace. It's just, there is a marketplace now for mentoring. And I think that's where you're going with what you're sharing, the research that you're doing is, it's just part of where we're going in our world at this point in time.
Yeah.
There's still lots of youth groups who've got free mentors coming in. Great, we understand that. But in business or associated with business, there is a marketplace. So if I take a jump here now, is because this is about certification, why is certification so important? Like, we haven't talked about certification and mentoring for years and years and years and years and years. And then all of a sudden, in these years, in the last probably 5 years or so, certification, mentoring, why is it important?
Well, I think part of the reason why we haven't had those conversations is that mentoring sometimes has a tendency to get kind of nestled into the coaching terminology. And, there are obviously there's certifications out there for the coaching industry, but there isn't today, until the international mentoring community came along. There really isn't a certification process that's in place for that. So why is certification important? I use the analogy of, would you want a non-certified journeyman mechanic working on your BMW car that you've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on acquiring? And to me, the idea behind it is that, yes, there's mentors out there, there's great mentors out there that, can bring value, but just think about how much more value they can bring to the arrangement or the relationship if they've actually had some formal training around the mentoring process and the mentoring concepts. And think of formal training kind of from the aspect of, because let me back up maybe. So for me, the aspect of training is paramount, is that we need to, and I'm reading this, I saw this just this morning, I was reading an article, and they talked about providing training for the mentees and the mentors. So when I talk to people about, they ask me the question, why would I want to become a certified mentor? What I try to do is take them through the aspect of, let's just park the certified mentor piece for a moment. Let's talk about how important training is. That's the first step. And that training can be, a 1 or 2 hour webinar. That could be a half-day workshop. That could be a whole-day workshop. Or you can make the informed decision that I think I want to become a certified mentor and understand what that means. And by understanding what that means, I guess, is that there's going to be obviously an investment that I'm going to have to make in myself to, with another organization that can provide that type of formal certification. But there's an investment that's going to have to take place. And it's also going to be an investment that is ongoing. I'm probably, if you take a look at what's in place today, certainly for the mentoring part of it, is that there's a recertification. So it's not something I'm going to, reach into a popcorn box and pull it out and go, woohoo, now I'm certified, that's all I have to do. You have to work at maintaining that certification. And so that brings credibility to that whole certification process. So the why part still, for me, when I say, why do I want to be certified? Number one, when I engage with organizations and with people, being able to demonstrate that I have gone through a formal education process and that, something that is governed by international standards, all of those pieces, that helps me market who I am as an individual, as far as, okay, so obviously if we're going to hire this Doug Lawrence guy, he's gone through, he's a certified mentor, he obviously has some processes that he follows, best practices and all of those. He obviously has some of those processes that we know that we're going to get value from him. I have been asked, I've been asked before, I've been engaged in various organizations, tell us why we should hire you. And my response has always been, I'm an international certified mentor, and I'm required to recertify every 2 years. I have guidelines that I have to follow. I have a code of ethics that I have to follow. And I'm always, always, always ensuring that I'm bringing value to your organization. But the most important thing is that I have gone through a formal certification process by an independent body. And so for me, the why part keeps coming back to the fact that it does in fact bring value to the organization and to the people that you're going to be interacting with in a mentoring relationship or a mentoring arrangement.
So in a sense, the certification is sort of like guide rails.
Yes.
Right? There's the organization that set it up, said, here's a guide rail. You're going through it going, okay, I want to become competent, all right, at what I'm doing and have some kind of continuance around. There's a guide rail. Oh, hang on, if you bring 2 guide rails together, sort of like the tracks of a train.
Right.
And you've got some way in which to go, okay, like a train can't run like wherever it wants to run. It has to go on these tracks. Uh, so I sort of see where you're going with this, and well, you know that I agree with the notion of certification and how important it really is. But I think the other part of it is just really a check and balance.
Mm.
Just checking in. Yeah, I'm sort of following what seems to be the practices that are necessary, and I'm living up to the standards that are associated with that. And I can balance off the fact that, well, okay, if I got to do this every couple of years, I've got to keep this front of mind and conscious. And because really, at the end of the day, there's someone sitting across from me asking me questions.
Mm-hmm.
And I better be my best me, be present, do those kind of things to be able to do this thing called mentoring. I think you'd agree with that part of it, right?
Yeah,
So
most definitely.
it's just simply a check and balance kind of idea. That's right. But now we're talking about sort of in general, because there's also the notion of self-certification and sort of independent certification. Do you want to explore that just for us a little bit? Because this just adds just a little bit more detail to what we're talking about here.
I certainly can. And what I basically, in order to sort of paint that picture, is I want to take us back to when I first started my company, when I started Talent Seed People Services. And at the time, I was mentoring university students, and long story short, that relationship, well, actually, it started as job coaching and it morphed itself into a mentoring relationship. And they were the ones that said, you need to do this for a living. We can't afford to pay you, but I'm sure somebody could. What I had basically done was, there are organizations, and God bless them for all the great things that they're doing, but there are organizations that, people would come to them and say, okay, we're going to take your training program, and they'll say, great, we'll issue you a certificate saying you're, obviously you're a certified mentor, or you've taken our program. And what I saw was, when I did that, I got thinking, okay, if I'm going to go down this path, then I want to go down the path with the idea of doing what I think is the right thing, which was to find an independent body that would oversee the certification process of mentors. I would provide the training and the curriculum around that, but I wanted to have an independent body that would say, okay, at the end of the day, you submit a whatever evidence package, you submit a portfolio, you have to submit something that we're going to be able to assess whether or not we will certify you as a mentor. And so that was where that all came into place. And I see it even still to today, where there are still organizations and they're still doing great stuff, but they're self-certified. They don't have that independent body that is overseeing the certification process. I think for me, it clouds, it makes the water kind of murky and cloudy when, if I'm delivering the training to train people and then I'm turning around and saying, oh, okay, yes, now you're certified, and I'm going to write the certificate and give it to them, something's missing. And it's having that independent body. So I do my part, I deliver the training, the formal education piece, but somebody else goes through and says, okay, now we're going to assess, your knowledge and your practical application of what it is you learned in the training program. And so for me, that's the self-certification versus the independent body, is that, when I started the journey back in 2009, it was with the intent of always working with an independent body, and I've stayed true to that vision to this date.
And then that's where we set up the IMC, the International Mentoring Community. And for lack of a better way of looking at it, Doug's the director of education. I'm the director of certification.
Yeah.
Right. As you get to know us through the Wellther Series and get to know us through the IMC, but what we do is we're very particular to what Doug's point is that there's the education, but there's also an independent inside the organization to do the certification awarding whether it's at the achievement or competence level. And there are reasons for that. We won't go into it on this video. You can certainly learn as you get more involved with IMC. But we took that to heart, right? To really make sure that when you get your knowledge, right? We call that the achievement, get your concepts, you've got that foundation. And then you get awarded a certificate for that through an audit. When you do your practice piece, you get awarded for the practice, because what we're going to do is verify your competence. And for some people, they just want to go through and get the knowledge. We got that.
Yeah.
There are other people that, no, I'd like to get to the point of the competence, which is why the certification, there's such an importance about understanding the knowledge concepts and the practical practices of this. So I'm sure you probably got a few things you'd want to share around the knowledge practice storyline from your experience when it comes to certification. What would you like to share around that?
Well, I like for myself, and I've seen this in some of the other folks that we've put through, various programs and that. But what I've seen is that there is a huge difference between the knowledge part and the practical perspective. And even from a certification perspective as well, is that I've played in both camps where, the certification was based, for the most part, based on your understanding of the concepts, the knowledge part. And there was limited, if anything, on the practical side of the house. And it needs to be a combination, as you've, so very nicely described, is it needs to be that combination of the two. That, you need to have the knowledge base, you need to understand the concepts, you need to be able to discuss those concepts, but then you need to also to take it to becoming actually certified as a competent mentor. You need to be able to demonstrate your application of all of those concepts. And that's the sort of the difference for me between the knowledge and the practical. When you get the two of those together and they form part of your overall certification process, what you have gone and created is a deeper, richer mentoring experience. Without a doubt, because when I think back to where I was, we started this journey in January of this year. When I think about the interaction that I had back then with some of my mentees and fast forward it to today and the interaction that I have, it's completely different. It's like night and day. And it is, I've been asked the question, what's happened to you? Because how we interact and how I feel at the end of our mentoring session is completely different than what it was like earlier. What happened to you? And it was very simply that I have a deeper, richer understanding of the value of mentoring, because I can take the practical knowledge and my ability the knowledge part, and then now I'm able to practically put that into practice in a better context. And so it's reinforcing that deeper, richer mentoring experience.
So again, the storyline of certification, checks and balances, guide rails, it's just helpful to a person. And I think you would probably hear both of us say, if you got us separate, would be, it's not that we're saying you must become certified kind of idea.
Right.
It's a way of going about your life and taking on the challenge and being conscious and seeing how competent you can be at what it is that you're learning. That's what's really important. So as we're sort of moving out of this conversation for today, any words that you'd like to share? Any last thoughts you'd like to offer everyone here?
Well, the big thing for me, I've already sort of iterated that, is the aspect of, whether it's a 2-hour webinar, whether it's a half-day course, whether it's a 1-day course or whatever, please, please, please make sure that you get some sort of training that will help you in being able to provide value to the person that you're mentoring. And the other part is, if you're a mentee, somebody out there that's searching for a mentor, ask the hard questions. Ask the hard question about what sort of training have you had? What, have you gone through a formal training program? And if so, what did that look like? Help me understand what that is. Because that's really important, because you need to make sure that as the mentee that you're going to get the value that you deserve to get as a result of the gift of mentoring.
Yeah, and that's why with IMC is that we've produced a course for mentees.
Yes.
A very simple course just to remind you of some key elements that when you walk into that mentoring arrangement, that you as a mentee have got a little bit forward thinking preparation approach, prevention mindset going on, so that you're going to get the most out of it, rather than that sort of deer in the headlights at the very beginning, because that's not going to be of help to either the mentor or the mentee. So with that, Doug, thanks very much. Appreciate it. And we'll catch you again at some point in time, because there's always going to be some updates in the Wellther series. And again, this is 404. So obviously there's 3 other videos in the series. And we look forward to hearing from you. And if you need to get a hold of us, you can just go to the Wealth Movement, look up Educating tab, and then you'll find the International Mentoring Community. And we'd be happy to answer your questions. And there's always a link wherever this video is about how to get to us as well. So with that, Doug, thanks very much, and take care.